Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Indexer Office Hours. Today is the 21st of March, and this is 𝗨𝗀 99, very close to that 100 mark, which is insane to even say out loud. For many of you who are regular attendees, you'll know this, but for anyone who is new to Indexer Office Hours, this is the town square for graph ecosystem participants to come together and discuss the most important and relevant topics for indexes. This is a conversation, and by that token, we love participation. And so at certain parts in today's conversation, we would love to hear your thoughts, and you can contribute to the conversation either via text in the text box in the corner, or you can unmute your mic. And if you're having any issues unmuting your mic, please do let us know, and we'll try and get that sorted for you so you can get involved in today's conversation. Final reminder, just before we get into today's episode, this is a session that is recorded and will go onto public channels like YouTube. So please bear that in mind if you're concerned about privacy. And with that, let's get into today's exciting agenda. Opening remarks, I always start off with a shout out to 𝗨𝘀𝗳𝗂𝗧, and today is no different. 𝗨𝘀𝗳𝗂𝗧 number 108. And that is with 𝗨𝘀𝗲, and 𝗨𝘀𝗲 is a very active member in the Graph Advocates, and the DAO, and she's supported many graph events and hackathons in the past. This was a very interesting podcast episode because it was a bit of a personal story of hers. She shared, talking about her education in philosophy and her initial skepticism of crypto, and then eventually what brought her into the space. And her journey into Web3 and how she arrived at the graph, and also speaking a bit about her contributions to the Advocates program and the Advocates DAO. So if you're interested in that episode, do check it out. And with that, I will hand it over to Anna, who's going to take us into our regularly scheduled repo watch. There you go.
Thank you, Ivo, and hello, everyone. Okay, so today on Repo Watch from an execution layer client, we have had a couple of new releases related to new Polygon versions on Firehose protocol version 2.2, and we'll talk about that in a bit more detail in a bit. Then on Get, we have had a new release, so version 1.11.5. All of the changes are included in the agenda. However, I won't cover them because this release relates to the Shanghai upgrade, which will be enabled on the 14th, soon. I think I got the wrong date, but yeah. Okay, and then on streaming fast Ethereum, so Firehose Ethereum, we have had quite a few releases. So from the least new to the latest, release number 1.3.5, and this adds support to withdrawal balance change reasoning block model. Then again, we have a few more changes here, but this release is required if you run Girly, and is mostly about supporting the upcoming Shanghai fork as well. Then we have release number 1.3.6. This release implements the new cancel block instruction for Firehose protocol 2.2 to reject blocks that failed post-validation. So again, this release fixes Polygon state sync transactions by grouping the calls inside an artificial transaction. So if you had previous blocks from Polygon chain BOR, you will need to reprocess all of your blocks from the node because of some of the state sync transactions that might be missing on some blocks. Also, this new release of Firehose instruments gets binary for all chain, which will soon all be tagged as Firehose 2.2. So if you upgraded Get any release higher than 1.3.6, or Firehose Ethereum, this Firehose Ethereum will be required. Then the most recent release here is 1.3.7, which fixes a bug in data normalization for Polygon chain which would again cause panics on certain blocks. So for that, I'm just gonna ask Matthew if you have anything to add to what I just mentioned, either in chat or unmute yourself. And nothing to add, thank you. Okay. And then we have had two new Nethermind releases, so version 1.17.1 and version 1.17.2. And the 17.1 can be treated as an optional release, and 17.2 is a hot fix addressing an edge case issue with occasional bad blocks production, which was spotted mostly on Ethereum testnet on Gnosis chain. So so please upgrade to this later release. And Matthew is telling us that Pinax team is running latest Firehose Ethereum release on Girl Ethereum, Polygon, and Sepolia and BNB. Thank you for that, Matthew. On consensus layer clients, we have had a new Prism release, so version 3.2.2. This release is mandatory only for Girly testnet, but it mostly relates to the 𝗨𝗲𝗂 hard fork. So it will not be important for everyone here. On Nimbus, we have had again a new release, 23.3.1 medium urgency release. It improves the stability of Nimbus when paired with a BESO execution layer that improves the fault tolerance when driving multiple execution layers. We have also had a new release for Lighthouse 3.5.1, which is low urgency upgrade for all users except for those using early test network. And that is it. That's all we've had. With that, I'm gonna hand over to Juan. Thank you.
Thanks, Anna. Can everyone hear me?
Yep, loud and clear.
Awesome, great. Cool. This is gonna be a super short protocol watch because there's not that much to update, but getting right into it. Forum governance, we don't have any updates since last IOH. Getting into forum research, we do have a few updates. One is for the QA's Oracle. Basically, there was a question regarding what the average indexer blocks behind metric actually represents, or rather, what is it being compared to? There hasn't been a response, but I think Craig will be answering that shortly, hopefully. But it's basically, it's the blocks behind, the average blocks behind against some form of RPC or maybe the hosted service itself. I'm not entirely sure, but I would assume those are the answers. Next up, we have the optimizing GRT liquidity on Uniswap v3 by Range Protocol. I'm not entirely sure who Range Protocol is or what Range Protocol is rather, but they claim they can improve the UX on Uniswap v3. Yeah, that's pretty much it. It's mostly an informative thread. So if you're interested, just go give them some feedback. Next up, we have the contracts repository. There's not a lot going on, mostly just a removal of the GRT withdrawal helper on the, I would assume, L2 migration helpers. Most likely it's not needed. And there's two open PRs for what's called Scratch testnet, which is basically the testnet deployment to test those L2 migration helpers and make sure that those are ready by the time they hit mainnet. Core network subgraphs, we don't have anything to add because there's no new releases since last OH, and that would be pretty much all for Protocol Watch. I'm going to hand it over to Abel now.
Fantastic, thank you so much. And now I'm going to hand it over to Pedro, who's going to take us into our regular MIPS update.
All right, hello. Thumbs up, Abel, if you can hear me.
Yes, thumbs up.
Yep. Cool. New setup, new laptop. Figured might as well test things out first. All right, cool. Hey everyone, yes, I have a quick update, but most of this has been shared by email as well. Figured it could make sense to talk about those here if you have questions. So the main thing, so starting with the QoS that Juan was just talking about, the Oracle and the subgraph itself, they've been working fine since March 11th. However, because it was down for some time while the phase 2 missions were active, we did export the QoS data once more. So you have a CSV in the public Google Drive folder if you want to take a look. Fair reminder, this is just the simplified version, let's say, of like a simplified view, just for you to know how you are performing on those chains and really just for you to learn on how to optimize your stack to serve those chains while on mainnet. Craig has also posted this forum post Juan just mentioned, so nothing new there. The dashboard is indeed working fine, so I find that super helpful. I'm not sure if you've been using it. Let me know in the comments. Next, we have the Polygon missions. We've shared a bunch of updates there, and mostly some bootstrap help from Pinax. They've been sharing in their FTP server a bunch of data, really, just to get you all started quickly. So shout out to Pinax for their incredible. They're super helpful. They've been super helpful during these missions. So we have basically Firehose blocks being added to the FTP server. If you don't want to wait for those to be fully ready, which I believe should be by tomorrow. If you don't want to wait, you can download as they're being added to the remote server. Just make sure you use a proper FTP client that allows you for remote syncing, typically called mirroring option with some FTP clients. There's also a full node snapshot for bar or geth. So that's also helpful because, as you know, if you're running the Firehose, you will still need the full node itself, like the execution client. Also, there will be an Aragon-based archive snapshot that some community members, meaning 𝗨𝘀𝗀𝗳𝗂𝗋, Pain, have been testing lately. And so there's no missing state sync transactions. The page size is also better, meaning that you won't you won't be able, you will be able to go past the 8 terabytes disk space. Maybe Pain can talk about that a little bit. But so that Aragon archive snapshot is coming soon as well. It's going to be added to the FTP. Once that's available, we'll be sharing these in the MIPS announcement channel so you don't miss anything. For those that are running the 𝗨𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀 Firehose as a test before you go on to the full Polygon or whatever other chain you want to work with, 𝗨𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀 is pretty easy. It's a nice chain to get started. We have some guides in our Notion page too. And the Pinax is once again helping out with a full node snapshot for 𝗨𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀 as well. So that should also get you started quickly. This full node is for geth. I think for Polygon, that's mostly it. I would love to know though, if there's anyone already thinking of running a Firehose for Polygon, if you have some experience so far, any comments, I'll be happy to know how many people will be running this setup. I'm super curious. Then moving on with some general updates, we did share a new form for the L2 mission or related to the L2 mission. That's so we're basically collecting all of your contributions here on this mission. I mean, we have a list ourselves, so we want to give you the opportunity to let us know what you've done. And it could be a bunch of things. It could be forum, like feedback that you've shared in the forum or Discord, guides you may have built, helping out others in Discord also counts. So whatever you've done during this mission, feel free to share these by uploading either screenshots or links, whatever it might be. We'll take all of that into account. You'll have until March 27th, meaning next month, to share all of these. and meaning that the L2 score will be out early next week once we compute this last step. There will also be some new forms that you'll be able to complete by the end of the program that is currently slated for April 30th. So those are 3 forms for all of these chains, Arbitrum, Avalanche, Celo, and you'll also be able to tell us how you've been helping out on these chains, other than obviously completing the actual missions. And what else? There's one thing we should talk about, which is the EVMX workshop that was scheduled for next week's IOH, meaning 28th of March. It's going to be postponed for a week, hopefully, not longer than that. But we'll be confirming the actual final date by early next week too, hopefully Tuesday. During IOH, we can confirm the actual date, and we'll also be sharing that via email. So yeah, that's it. The main action item, I believe, right now is the L2 form. That's where we have a deadline, March 27th. Don't miss out. And yeah, there's plenty of stuff going on Polygon. I'm curious to know how you are thinking of participating. Yeah, that's all for today on MIPS. There's obviously a bunch of emails and Discord messages that we're going through. It may take you some time to go through everyone, but we're trying our best to answer in, based on our capacity and bandwidth. The best thing for you to reach out is to use to do so by email. Like we can't no longer follow every message on Discord. It gets super difficult for us to keep track of everything. So do make sure that you follow the email info@thegraph.foundation and just bear with us, give us some time, and we'll respond. Yeah, that's mostly it.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Pedro, for those updates there. And as many of you have heard, please do hit up the email there. Cool. Well, I'm very excited to talk about this next topic because it's close to home. We are very excited to announce that all the hard work we've been putting into GraphCast is finally come to fruition, and we're launching it officially today. A blog post will come very, very shortly after today. Let me just go ahead and share my screen so that you guys can see the presentation that I have put together. Very, very rough presentation, but it is one nonetheless. Okay, can I get a thumbs up if you guys can see my screen? Thumbs up? Yep. Gridcast, yes. Wonderful. Well, thank you all for confirming that you can see my screen. See, as I mentioned, today is the day that we launch GraphCast, the GraphCast network, as well as the POI radio and the SDK. And the main purpose here is to, as some of you already know, because we've, this is not the first time we're talking about this in IOH. We've obviously spoken about this before, but it's worth coming back to this topic and kind of laying things out because, some new changes have happened. So, yeah, just to reiterate, the purpose of the network is to enhance productivity, efficiency, and cost effectiveness in the ecosystem, be able to message each other. When I say each other, I mean indexers to message each other certain messages to improve the efficiency in the network. And so, yeah, I'll speak specifically to what that means as it relates to the network. So right now on blockchains, it costs a lot of money to exchange messages. And that obviously means that there's a minimum value required to send a particular message, which means that collaboration that would otherwise happen doesn't. And so we thought that is a lost opportunity, and which is why we've built the GraphCast network. And there are many types of radios that could be built on top of the network, and I'll let 𝗨𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀 speak to those as we've decided to launch one of them ourselves. So 𝗨𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀, if you can unmute your mic, feel free to discuss the use cases and obviously the POI radio, which is what we're going to be introducing.
Sure thing. Can everyone hear me fine?
Yes, loud and clear.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks, Abel. So, as we said, we've spoken about GraphCast and about radios on the network a few times before in IOH and also in community call and core dev call. So I'm going to try to keep things fairly high level, but of course speak about the new things that have went in since that time. So pretty much on top of the GraphCast network, we can build these so-called radios, which is just regular software that utilizes the GraphCast SDK in order to specify what kinds of messages should be sent, are going to be sent and received by that specific radio. Here on the screen, you can see a few use cases that we've thought about. I'm not going to go into all of them in detail. You can pretty much get the idea of what they're going to be for. But like in a nutshell, a radio is basically for exchanging information between ecosystem participants in a certain pre-configured format. And that information can be really any data. So honestly, I personally am pretty excited to see what the future holds for radios on GraphCast. Today, I'm specifically going to be speaking about the POI radio because the POI radio is the radio that we're building ourselves as GraphOps, and we've made some significant progress on it. So currently, as I'm sure a lot of people on the call know, it's not very straightforward to track POIs across the network and to get notified or even to spot divergences in POIs as they happen. So this is pretty much what the POI radio tries to solve. And by solving that, hopefully it will solve a significant portion of the data determinism issues in the network. So how it works is it is a GraphCast radio that runs alongside the rest of your indexer software. It generates POIs, and here it's important to differentiate because it sends normalized POIs onto the network, obviously not your own POI, and then compares that across the network with the POIs of other participants. So a few things worth noting that have happened recently is we have added multi-chain support. To see the full list of supported chains, I'm going to drop a link in the chat right after this section. But yeah, we're no longer only on Ethereum, which is great. And we've also have set up a Docker image for POI radio, which is uploaded into onto GitHub's container registry. All of that is on the docs, which I think Abel has shared. Yeah, so all of that is in the docs, and you can check it out. Yeah, so if we can go to the next slide, I guess, or is that the demo slide? Yeah, this is a not gonna go too much into detail about the workflow. Of course, that's also on the docs, so you can check it out there as well. And I just want to say that there is a form on the previous slide that maybe Abel can share a link to in the chat as well. Yeah, thanks. So anyone who wants a session with someone from our team to kind of ask questions, give feedback, or just in general helping out with setting up POI radio, we'd be very glad to do so. Okay, now I'm very excited and a bit anxious because it's actually demo time. So I can share my screen.
In the meantime, I want to thank Indexer DAO. I can see Packer in the comments there just saying 10 out of 10 would recommend. They've been a massive help in terms of testing this thing. So yeah, huge thank you to those guys. Very, very much appreciate you. And all the other folks as well, because there's a few other folks here as well who've helped us out. Payne, big shout out to you. Jim, another shout out to you, and many others as well. I'm sorry if I'm missing anyone, but yeah, it's been a lot of fun testing it with you guys, and I look forward to many other indexers testing it out as well. Cool. Looks like Pekka's back up, so I will mute my mic.
Thanks, 𝗨𝗀𝗂𝗟𝗶. Hopefully everyone can see me.
Yeah, sorry, I was just going to say a small reminder that you need to switch streams from 𝗨𝗀𝗂𝗟𝗶 stream to 𝗨𝗀𝗂𝗧 stream in order to see his share.
Thank you, Chris. Yeah, that's always important. So we're not seeing that much on the screen now. This is the logs of a running POI radio instance. I've set the logs to a very verbose level, so by default, it's not this big of log dump. Don't worry. But here I just want to point some things out. So currently, I'm running an instance of the radio. So I am generating POIs, sending them as messages onto the network. And at the same time, I'm receiving messages from other participants. And on a given interval, I am comparing the remote POIs that I've received from other participants with my own. And maybe just call out a few logs here. You can see where we've validated incoming messages, and you can see the contents of those incoming messages. You can see that we're also sending messages, and yeah, you can see that we're also sending messages, and you can see where the comparing messages happens. And I know this is a ton of logs, but don't worry, it's gonna get more fun in a sec when we see what actually happens when there is a POI divergence. So let me just scroll down to the bottom here. Also, I want to share with everyone something that is very, very, very much work in progress, but I know a lot of people were excited. So POI radio really soon is going to have very cool data-rich Prometheus metrics. This is just a very small sneak peek. Right now, we only have these boring graphs of number of valid messages, which I've been running the radio for a while. So obviously, it's only number go up, and right now it's like 1,372. And then this here is the subgraphs that we are actively comparing to other participants in the network. There's only two, and again, I promised to share a video when the metrics get a bit more fun, but again, this is like a small sneak peek into what's coming. So now we currently have two other instances of the radio running that are sending messages that have the same POIs, which is obviously pretty boring. Let's see what happens when we start getting divergent messages. So just bear with me for a second, because I'm using a setup, a fake setup, because I don't have a lot of testnet indexers I can run on the same time. In the meantime, if there's any questions to what we've spoken until now, that'd be great. Otherwise, yeah, we're just waiting for the divergent instances to start. In the meantime, I can just point out that in order to participate in the GraphCast network, you would have to set your GraphCast ID, which is pretty easy. It's just a registry smart contract that you use your indexer operator address to register a GraphCast ID. So it's on Etherscan, it's verified, so it's just a matter of calling set GraphCast ID for a function. But all of that is in the docs, so again, I don't want to get into that now. Okay, so actually things happen pretty quickly. It's the real pure radio is not going to just crash and burn when we get divergent POI. So POI that's not equal to ours, but this is just for demo purposes. So even here, you see it says POIs don't match for whatever subgraph on whatever network and on whatever block. And what's even more important is that you can set up your radio instance to actually send you notifications when a POI divergence happens. So you can set up a Slack bot to send you a message like this, where it says notification from the radio, POIs don't match, and you have all this neat info. You can actually see here that our own POI is this one, and our own stake is this, but we have another POI that's different from ours, and there is more compounded stake tied to it. So that is why our POI is considered divergent from the consensus POI. Just another very quick thing, you can also set up Discord notifications. So over here, basically see the same message notifying of a divergence. So yeah, that's just a neat way to spot when your POI is not matching the consensus POI. Of course, once the Prometheus metrics get better, you'll also be able to see stuff like that there. But for now, yeah, this is what we have. And just really real quick, I want to show you how you can get started with POI radio even right away. Like after you've registered your GraphCast ID, it's just a matter of pulling the image from our container registry and running it with the appropriate environment variables. So I actually think that's it for the demo. Thank you all very much. And if there's questions, I'm stoked to answer them.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Petko. I just want to direct everyone's attention to the comments where Chris has put a poll down to ask if Telegram, Discord, or Slack is the place that you guys would like to receive notifications. And so, yeah, if you could share your sentiment, that would be amazing. No trolling, please, because we'll actually take this as genuine feedback that we'll potentially implement into this. So, yeah, would appreciate the feedback there. Cool. Seems like Discord is flying away, but Telegram is a second. That's interesting. I didn't expect to see that, so that's really useful to see. Oh gosh, who did P? Who was that? Who's the troll? Okay, Vincent. I don't know what P is, but oh, I see. Oh, I see. Okay, that's legit. That's legit. Yes. Cool. Amazing. That's really useful. Thank you so much, guys. Cool. Well, let's get back to the presentation. So if you guys could switch over to my stream. And so as Petko has shown, that is the POI radio. But if you are looking at that thinking, oh, wow, I am also interested in potentially, leveraging the GraphCast network and building a radio myself. Luckily for you, we've built an SDK, and it's effectively a library for making GraphCast radios. And the way that we tried to create this SDK is that it kind of abstracts away a lot of the infrastructure so that you can just go ahead and just build in the easiest way possible. What we've done is we've put together a small little ping pong app to show an example as to how to build a radio on the using the SDK, and you can go ahead and check that out in the docs. I'll grab a link to that here, pop it in the chat. There we go. And so yeah, that is the SDK. And then next, just to kind of give you guys a visual representation of how all of these things interlink. You have every indexer and they have their own setup, and they're running these radios within their setup. Those radios are built using the SDK, and they're obviously these radios plug into the GraphCast network. So hopefully this visualization helps give you guys a clear idea of how this stuff works. That leads me on to action items. So obviously we would love participation feedback. So for the POI radio, we would love for you guys to use it. We've linked to a form there that you can check out if you would like to be personally onboarded onto the POI radio. We would love feedback. We want to make this thing a lot better for you guys and improve it in ways that make sense. Even just this Telegram conversation was really useful. Now that we know that people want to see Telegram. That's going to influence, what we prioritize next. So really appreciate that feedback. And then the SDK, we'd love to see you guys build radios, and again, reach out to us for feedback on any potential radios you'd like to build. We'd love to support you in that process. If you have any ideas, and if we can make the SDK better for you, the more feedback, the better. If there's anything we can do to incentivize you guys to build radios, we'll consider this. But we want to see a ton of radios. So that is my main ask of everyone in here as it relates to POI radio and SDK. That's it. That is everything as it relates to the presentation. Now we can open up for Q&A. I see the chat is quite lively, and so let's get into it. Any UI or Grafana dashboards? So I'm not sure if this has been answered already. Landing, Chris has already answered that. Fantastic. Soon, very, very soon. Okay, I see some people typing questions. Fire away, and also feel free to unmute your mic and ask questions like that as well. All is welcome. I see people typing. Okay, I'll just give people a second to finish typing. Vince, are you asking us to send you a journal for radio? What do you mean? I'm confused. Let's see. And then I see, I think so. I think a swag request. Yeah, we'll consider. And we have another question, but it looks like it's related to MIPS. So I'll let Pedro, if he's still here, to respond to that.
I do have one question, if I may.
Yes. Yeah, fire away.
So in terms of just some of the coordination efforts, so I know that a lot of indexers are going to be running the software necessary to create and use radios. But in terms of ways that we could better coordinate with subgraph developers and subgraph deployers, that's something that I'm interested in kind of diving into. How would someone who's not necessarily indexing, not necessarily be running the the software necessary for the interfacing with various radios, how would they ultimately be able to communicate via a radio? Or is that
Yeah, I'll take that one. Hey, Derek, thanks for the question. So first of all, yes, that is possible. Essentially, the underlying messaging layer, which is WACU and libp2p, both of these protocols have support across many different languages, including JavaScript. And so it is very feasible to ship, effectively something like a GraphCast client that, ships as a JavaScript library that loads into a web app and effectively allows, that becomes the entry point. And to your question around, allowing radios to facilitate coordination between non-indexing participants, that's kind of definitely something that we're excited about and interested in. And you had already identified one of the very earliest use cases around this when we had that discussion around the N+1 signal migration challenge. And this is definitely, I think this is honestly one of the most exciting prospective use cases for non-indexing participants is, being able to seamlessly and at no cost coordinate those upgrade intentions. But yeah, I'm sure there will be other similar use cases. And I guess just to come back to your first question, it would be via the browser.
Okay, so it'd be simple enough to just link, a connected wallet address or the message sender, so to speak.
Yeah, so as it stands, so radios, part of the kind of utility that the GraphCast SDK provides to a radio developer is that it handles all of the identity resolution and message validation functionalities. I mean, what I mean by that is, one, GraphCast, the SDK will be able to attribute any given message on the network to a graph account identity. Presently, those will be indexers, but there's no reason those couldn't be other graph accounts, like curators or subgraph developers or whatever. And yeah, so as it stands, that like the registry doesn't support it, but the registry contract is upgradable. It's also fairly trivial for us to migrate registry contracts if need be. So there's a small set of changes that would be required just to, I guess, make that compatible with the use case that you have in mind. With indexers, we actually require that an indexer registers a separate GraphCast ID because that just makes a lot of sense for security reasons. You don't want them to be reusing those more sensitive keys across many contexts, and so there's this separate identity. But you could also imagine that for certain types of roles, like if you're a subgraph developer, for example, and you have that key loaded into MetaMask anyway, because that's the workflow that you have for interacting with the chain and publishing a subgraph or whatever, it would be trivial to use that same identity to actually sign a message that is ultimately broadcast via GraphCast. So yeah, definitely possibility there, but a small number of maybe like identity resolution tweaks that would need to happen.
Awesome. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, us too. I don't know if we have a form yet, actually, for interested third-party developers on radios, but I know we're in touch anyway. But for anyone else that's interested, please don't hesitate to reach out.
Yeah, I just wrote in the comments, please do DM us if you are interested in setting up a radio. That would be, yeah, we'd love to support. Any additional questions?
Hey, yeah, I have a quick question on self-hosted indexers. So right now I have a setup where I have several sets of indexers that need to be isolated due to just data isolation, and they're indexing subgraphs on the same chains. And I noticed that a lot of RPC calls and disk space were being used because of the block cache and chain data in general. And I was hoping to save on those by sharing chain data. And I noticed GraphNode has a more advanced configuration file that you can use to try to achieve more distributed queries or indexing. And so I was looking through there and testing some things out, but I wanted to ask the group here, has anyone tried sharing chain data across isolated indexers? Has this been done before? Is it possible? Or is GraphNode really ever intended to work this way? Just wanted to reach out. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a more general question. So anyone, feel free to respond to that.
I think the exact configuration that you've described is not necessarily an intended one, but I think you could probably, I don't know what your reasons are for wanting to segregate the data If it is more about segregation at the database level as opposed to, you know, again, unclear what your requirements are there, but you might look at sharding, where you can, effectively have a set of database instances that are all connected to the same Postgres, but you can essentially have block cache and call cache data in one shard, and then you can use what are they called? Anyway, it's in that advanced graph node configuration. You can basically specify rules that kind of route a given subgraph deployment to a shard, and so you could probably achieve this kind of segregation that you're looking for potentially, but without operating completely independent graph node and indexing instances, and therefore share the block cache and call cache between them.
Gotcha. Thank you. Yeah, I do have an experiment running right now where I have one graph node that's purely responsible for block ingestion, and then the other indexers that are mainly just indexing subgraphs are using that database just for block data. And it seems to be working right now. I do notice that some tables are showing up on the ingester database because of how GraphNode operates and has fallbacks and in case of indexers going down. But yeah, I'll probably have to do some more digging. It sounds like this isn't something that many people have tried before. But thank you for your insight.
No worries. I would want to answer any other GraphCast and POI radio related questions first. But if not, would definitely be keen to understand your needs. And my suspicion would be that sharding is the feature that you're looking for. But if not, then it would be curious to understand why sharding doesn't work for you.
I'll just stay silent for now while other questions flow, and if there's time, I'd be really happy to discuss that.
Awesome.
Sweet. Any other GraphCast, POI, radio, SDK related questions? See, Vince is writing again. At present, we have the POI radio running. We want to build some more, and we also want to encourage other folks to build more as well. But the POI radio is the one that's running at the moment. And if you'd like to try it, we would love to. I mean, everything's available. Anyone can go ahead and spin up the radio and start playing around with it. Yes, please do send a DM. But of course, we would love to hear, feedback and kind of walk through this with you guys, so that we can improve it and make it the best, most useful tool.
Yeah, I think Abel meant that there's one radio, i.e. the POI radio. But yeah, there are certainly many instances of that radio running across different indexers. But please do sign up and join the group.
I'm sorry, did I misunderstand the question? I thought the question was how many radios are currently running. Yeah, it wasn't clear if it was instances or, yeah, sorry if I misunderstood that.
Yeah, so I asked a question up there. So fair bit up the chat, but it reads, what should an indexer do once the POI radio detects a divergence? And yeah, Petco has kind of referenced that, because I think that's going to be a really important question in terms of the next steps for how the POI radio evolves. Obviously today it will just tell you, in near real time. So currently, given the intervals, within roughly 2 minutes of a divergence happening, it will let you know. But obviously, there's the question of what happens next. And that's definitely feedback that we'd love to hear about. So if you have any ideas, please do let us know, because I think that's something we're going to be thinking about over the next few weeks and months. As you can imagine, there are scenarios where the POI radio can detect that your indexer has just diverged from a majority group, and there's like a very clear issue on the indexer side. So there's like that kind of scenario. There's a scenario where the POI radio is detecting a distinct set of, diverged groups. There's the scenario where the POI radio detects that a subgraph has, no true determinism. So that there are various scenarios for divergence, and if anyone has ideas about how we can deal with each of those, we'd love to hear.
I think the obvious thing to tackle first is, no matter what type of divergence or event you have in terms of POIs being different or whatever, it would be very useful if the radio was also able to pull other stats about the indexer in an opt-in sort of way. What version of graph node are you running? What version of the agent are you running? What version of, what client are you using? What are you using Aragon, using Geth? What version are you using? That type of stuff. Like, there's a base layer of information that would be immediately useful in every situation. And it would be really cool if the radio was able to pull that information.
That's an awesome idea, Jim. Fully agree there. I think one of the challenges that we kind of see with that is in some sense, it kind of requires that you pass, almost every single one of the dependencies across the entire stack. You kind of then have to pass into POI radio somehow. I think that might be okay. Like, excuse me. If we were to make it, like, you can pass in basically any set of dependencies that seem relevant. Nothing is required, everything is optional, but you can pass blockchain nodes, you can pass Postgres, you can pass, any number one of the input dependencies that would have some impact on determinism. You can just pass to the radio if you want to, and then the radio, can kind of identify those dependencies, and as you said, at least help us attribute some of the divergences to specific issues or, configurations of the stack. I'm actually going to make a request. We're trying to, like, ultimately all of what gets implemented will flow through GitHub first. So please do keep sending us your ideas, but the best possible place to put them is in a GitHub issue on the POI radio repo. So I'll just put that out there. Vince is kind of +1ing the idea that stack information would really help figuring out divergences and root causing. Pedro is saying, I was wondering if it could be extended beyond being reactive to divergences, like sharing more metadata. Like Jim just mentioned, that could help out with investigations on why the divergence happened in the first place. Yeah, I think we're all on the same page here. I think even, even beyond contextual metadata that would help root causing, I think there are even some set of steps that the PR radio could take to actually root cause the issue. And that might, not to get too far ahead of ourselves, and certainly no promises here, but in theory, the radio could do some basic kind of probing of the system and investigations, even things like bisecting, the computation tree and like all of the Ethereum calls that led up to that state, in order to really zero in on what happened. And I know Edge and Node has done a decent amount of work in this area, so perhaps there is an opportunity to bring some of our tooling together.
Another idea that comes to mind, and maybe this is a separate radio, I don't know. We have we have a channel called subgraph health, where indexers will, if they have a fatal error on a subgraph that they can't fix, they'll post some information there about, the specific IPFS hash, the error that occurred, the block it occurred at, a radio that could do telemetry around subgraph health. So rather than me going to this clunky channel and clunkily copying some things across from my terminal, there's telemetry that, automatically picks these things up from indexers that are on the peer-to-peer network, the GraphCast network. And rather than having to hope that somebody might check their, subgraph, the data's there in telemetry to sort of corroborate whether other people are having similar problems on the subgraph. And that, that reaches out into other communities. Like, you could imagine Misari could be keeping an eye on that. They could have notifications for when anything comes in for their specific subgraphs based off the telemetry. Yeah, another idea, I guess.
Yeah, it's another great one. And actually Hope has already done quite a lot of work speccing this one out.
Cool.
Right now it's, I think it's kind of codenamed the indexing statuses radio, but yeah, anything like, any events like subgraph failure, determinism or deterministically or non-deterministically, even things like indexing analytics, things like, average sync speeds through various parts of the subgraph. Yeah, we have been thinking about that, so glad to hear that it resonates with you as well.
Anyone's got just to remind you that potentially there could be grants involved here if you have something that you want to have built, or if you want to build something, then reach out to the grants team at the foundation. Reem specifically. Is there anyone else at the foundation they should reach out to, Pedro? I think that would probably be the right person, right? If somebody had an idea for a GraphCast radio.
Yeah, Reem first. I'll be involved at some point, but yes, please do reach out to Reem, and I can also leave a link to our form in the chat, so you can formally apply.
Awesome, thanks, Pedro.
Yeah, thanks for mentioning that. Great call.
And also an idea, but yet to happen. But we also might think about potentially running like a little hackathon to see, interesting radios be built in a short period of time. And obviously, yeah, we have the grants program that can support that as well. So yeah, we'd love to see people build on this. All right, cool. Well, final round of questions, thoughts. Please do comment in the comment box, or feel free to unmute your mic. If not, I will take this opportunity to wrap. I want to say a big thank you to everyone who has joined us for today's conversation and all of the amazing feedback and comments and thoughts that have come through. I'm excited to see the comments around people's ideas for radios. This is amazing, and as we said, there's grants available, so please do check out the SDK. Let me just grab the link of the docs again, just so you can have a look. There it is right there. Yeah, thank you all for attending, like I said, and we look forward to seeing all the magical things you guys build. Yeah, we will see you again next week. Thanks, everyone, and take care.
Bye, everyone.